Hello everyone, my name is Kat Gordon. I'm Senior Conservation Officer at the Siarc Trust. I'm going to talk to you a bit more about the Great Eggcase Hunt, which is a citizen science project that we've had running for nearly 20 years now. We're getting involved with Project Siarc and trying to encourage more records of these mermaids' purses to be submitted from around Wales. For you who aren't as familiar with the Siarc Trust, we're based down in Plymouth, Devon. We're a small charity. We were established back in 1997, and that was at a time when sharks received very little to no management at all. So it's come an awful long way in the past 25 years, and we need to keep reminding ourselves that. Although we're quite a small charity, we do work internationally. So we kind of work within the UK, across Europe, throughout the Mediterranean, and are also present in international fora as well. So we do have quite a large remit. It's quite a fine balance, the work we do, in terms of some species can withstand more fishing pressure than others. So we're heavily involved in fisheries management to make sure those species have correct management in place. Other species really can't withstand fishing pressure, so like the angel shark, the critically endangered angel shark, and so we also have to look at species protection where species need full protection from commercial activity and recreational activity as well. So it really is a fine balance. And on top of that as well, we've got a number of citizen science projects where we try and get the public engaged in shark conservation as well. And that's really key for us, especially within the UK, to better understand that we have got shark, skates and rays in our waters as well. So again, just a recap, or for those of you who aren't as familiar with sharks, they have a number of different reproductive strategies depending on the species. There's over 1,200 species of shark, skates, rays, and then we've got the chimeras as well. So some species give birth to live young, as mammals do. So these are viviparous species, and that includes those such as the blue shark. On the scale of sharks, blue sharks are actually quite fecund. They produce kind of 4 to 135 pups. Sharks generally are long-lived, produce few young, and are quite kind of vulnerable to fishing pressure. The blue shark is one of those species that can actually withstand a bit more fishing pressure than some, so they're one that require management. On the flip side, you've got the short-fin mako, who produce fewer pups as well and are much more vulnerable. We've got species that produce egg cases that are retained internally. They then hatch within the female and are born as if they're live young. So that includes species such as the whale shark. And then we've got our oviparous species, so our egg-laying species, like this small spotted cat shark or lesser spotted dogfish. And this is the egg case that she'll lay. So a lot of you will hopefully be familiar with these. I don't know if you can tell from the photo, but they do have curled tendrils on each corner of those of that capsule, and the female will swim round and round something like seaweed as she's laying, and it will those tendrils will act as rope, and it will tie it onto the seaweed, so it will kind of keep it nice and anchored as the embryo develops within. So around 40 species of sharks and skates produce in this way, so it's quite a lot. And that covers 5 different families as well. So our skate, those chimeras, cat sharks, of which we've got 3 species in the UK that will produce this way, and then carpet and zebra sharks and horn sharks as well. So the egg cases are quite varied in their form. You can look at the size, the shape, the different features, and that will help distinguish which species actually laid it. They'll also, I mean, depending on where you're hunting throughout the UK, throughout the world, some of them you'll find washed up on the sand, some will be tucked in amongst the seaweed, so you'll find them in different locations on the beach. So in terms of the skate life cycle, the female will lay the skate egg case quite often, for a lot of species, quite often on the seabed. Those kind of pointed horns on each corner will be buried within the sand. They've got a sticky mucus membrane over them that will attract sand and detritus, bits of seaweed, things like that, and it will help weigh the egg case down. and it will help camouflage it as well as it's developing. So different species will be developing for a different length of time. Something like the thornback grey, it's maybe around 5 months or so. Something like the flapper skate, which is much bigger, it's thought it could potentially be up to around 2 years. So they're quite a long development time in these capsules. So you can see the photo there, where the illustration, sorry, where the skate starts to get kind of so big in the egg case that the wings will fold over its body because it hasn't got any more room to grow, and the tail will point into one of the horns. And that actually acts as a pump. It will beat backwards and forwards, and there's small slits that are along the horn that allow lovely fresh oxygenated seawater into the capsule and allow waste to leave as well. So they'll beat their tail backwards and forwards and bring in that oxygenated water. Once they've got to the point that there's no more room in the egg case and the yolk sac's been fully absorbed and they're ready to go, then the opening at the top between the horns will open, and the young skate will swim out, and that's a perfectly formed miniature version of the adult. They have to fend for themselves. They have to avoid predators, find their own food, so they don't get any parental care, and they're on their own from that point onwards. After they've done all of that wiggling to get out of the egg case, the capsule will quite often become loose from its resting place, and they're also much lighter. So they'll get picked up by the waves and the currents, and they'll usually make their way to the shore, where you can find them washed up in the strand line. So the area where all the seaweed is, and all the flotsam and jetsam, and the whelk eggs, crabs, shells, things like that. So that's always a good place to hunt when you're out looking for these egg cases. Once they're dried out, they're much lighter, so they can get picked up and blown to the back of the beach. So looking in sand dunes and grasses where they get trapped is also a good bet as well. So that's the skate life cycle. Looking at some of the cat sharks, again, very similar stage. This one just shows how the yolk sac will start shrinking and the embryo will start growing. I think it'll be too small to see, but on stage 2, where it's got that egg yolk, there's a very small blip in the top corner of that, and that's the embryo that's just starting out. And then it's only around stage 4 there where you can see that it's starting to look a bit shark shaped. And it's got its gill filaments that are developing on the outside of the body, so they kind of wave around. They've got a nice big surface area to again trap all of that oxygenated seawater. Stage 6, that yolk sac's really starting to shrink, and by stage 7 it's been completely absorbed, and the cat shark is ready to hatch out of that egg case. So you can see on this one, this is the nurse hound or bull huss. When they're laid, they're kind of nice, shiny and almost see-through. So especially using a torch behind it, you can really see the yolk sac inside, and quite often you can see the embryo dancing around as well. So this one helps to show the size of it. So the nurse hound egg case is around 8 to 10 centimetres or so. The hatched cat shark will be around 16 centimetres. So again, they're nicely kind of curved up in the egg case in a U shape as they develop, and then will pop out of the top once they're ready to go. So this just helps show the difference between how well they can become camouflaged. So the egg cases on the left are freshly laid, nice shiny egg cases, no fouling on them at all, and they really do stand out. And then the one on the right has been developing for several months, and it starts attracting seaweed and bryozoans and different growths and things, and it really helps to camouflage the egg case, making it more difficult to spot. This species takes around 9 months or so for them to hatch. They can still get predated on. Quite often, if you find an egg case that's got a really small, perfect hole in it, it will be a mollusk that's drilled into it to get that nutritious egg yolk. So the cat shark ones are slightly more obvious if you're a snorkeler or diver to see. The skates and ray egg cases can be a little trickier to see. This one's actually a thornback ray egg case that was seen up in Scotland by a shark scientist who, again, like Jake with the angel shark, knew what they were looking for as well, because they are incredibly well camouflaged. So we do ask people to record any sightings that they've made underwater as well. So if you're out snorkeling, diving on an SUP or kayak, open water swimming, and you encounter any, then you can still record those through to the Great Eggcase hunt. So these are the different species that we've got throughout the British Isles and kind of covering northwest Europe as well. Some species are more common than others. We've got the spotted ray, the thornback ray, and the small spotted cat shark are the most common species, and they can be found on all British coastlines near enough. We've got species like the small-eyed ray, the cuckoo ray, the blonde ray. They're generally a bit more focused in southwestern Wales, but not exclusively so. It's just that's where you're more likely to find them. The undulate ray is more restricted to the south coast of the UK. You're not as likely to find that in many other regions. The starry skate's more on the North Sea coast. So again, you're less likely to find it unless you're on the east coast of the UK. The flapper skate and the blue skate were previously known as the common skate, and that was long confused as a single species, and it was only around 2010 when that was actually formally recognised as being two distinct species. We've got the flapper skate that's the more northerly of the two. If you go up to Orkney and some of the Northern Isles and west coast of Scotland, then there's a stronghold for that species there. And if you go to some of those beaches, you're tripping over their egg cases. You can find them in their hundreds. And this is a critically endangered species. And you go anywhere else in the world and you're very unlikely to encounter it. Except one was recorded in Aberystwyth a month or two back, which is really exciting. That's the first record from Wales that we've had confirmed to the Great Eggcase hunt. So that's really exciting. We're not sure yet whether that was blown down in the storms or whether it's a female that could have been nearby laying. So keep your eye out for that one. They're actually can show afterwards, but they're huge egg cases. So they can look a bit like bark, but if you know what you're looking for, then you shouldn't miss them. The blue skate is a slightly more southerly distribution than the flapper, and we've really not had many of those egg cases recorded to the project. There's been less than 10, and with that there's been a couple from Cornwall from the north coast, there's been a couple from Scotland, and there's been about 3 from South Wales, so on the Gower and in Pembrokeshire. So although there's not very many species, it's kind of giving fairly good indication of where you are likely to find them. And then the white skate is a Celtic sea species, so we're looking at mainly the southwest coast of Ireland where we've had those ones reported from. Then with the cat sharks, like I said, the small spotted cat shark's one of the more common ones that you can find on most coastlines. The nurse hound is again southwestern Wales, and it's probably the most predominant species that you would find on the Welsh coast. And then the blackmouth cat shark is one of the smaller cat shark species. That one, again, we've had very few records come through. It's a deeper water species. The eggs are laid much lower down in the water, so they aren't washed up quite so often. So we're really pleased that we've managed to get this poster translated into Welsh as part of Project Siarc, and we launched that today. So if you're out and about on some of North Wales Wildlife Trust's egg case hunts, then they've got those to pass on to you all, so you can easily identify what you've been finding. Some of the other resources we've got a junior egg case ID guide, so made all the more fun with googly eyes. So you should still be able to tell the features of the egg case and figure out which species they are based on that one. And as part of that series, we've also got a junior egg case ID trail as well. So that's got the characters that you can print out and stick around your garden, your house, the school, anywhere that you want to do an egg case trail if you can't get to the beach as well. So in terms of when it comes to recording your finds, you can do them a few different ways. We've got our online recording form on the website. So if you go to eggcase.org, then you should navigate to that fairly easily. If you add all of your details, so where you found it, if you upload a photo, we can just double check the identification of what you found. We're excited that again we will be developing that web form in Welsh language version as well. And if you just make sure, if you do find any egg cases, that you just pop in Project Siarc as the organisation, then we can know that you're recording it through this project as well. So as well as the online recording form, we did have an app. If you've got the app, you may have noticed it's not functioning quite as it should be. So that one's coming offline, and we are developing a new citizen science app, which will be available hopefully very soon, in the next few months at least. So keep an eye out for that. Or you can send parcels of egg cases through to the office and we can add them up that way. The maps, the project's been going since 2003, so the maps look fairly chaotic. The red ones are where we've seen photos or specimen. The blue, we haven't had verification of those. We're not going to ditch the records, but it still helps to be able to split them out if we need to. And the yellow are the underwater records, so a lot of these are from scientific surveys as well. We do accept records from all over the world as well, so we are getting more from the US and Australia in particular. We don't necessarily have ID materials for everywhere, but if you're on holiday and you find some, drop us a line and we'll always try and help out with ID. And egg case hunting really is for all ages as well, from any generation. It gets extremely competitive. You'll want to be the first one to find an egg case on the beach. You want to be the first one to find a new species as well. So the project, the first 10 years of the project kind of ticked over fairly nicely and slowly and fairly calmly, and then it got to around 2016 and it started exploding. So we get on average around 35,000 records a year now. I think this is the rise of social media, the development of the app and things like that. Last year was a pretty quiet year. Don't know if we can put that down to COVID, as 2020 wasn't too bad, but this year we're already nearly overtaking it within the first quarter. So, like I said, the breakdown of species, thornback rays, small spotted cat sharks and spotted rays, that makes up around 70% of the records. So they really are the most predominant species. And then we did work out our top 5 recorders. So I had to include this in here, as North Wales Wildlife Trust made an appearance at number 5, almost made it to number 4. So just a few more egg cases. So just wanted to put that in there for incentive this year to get out there and make sure you're finding more than ever, so you can bump up the leaderboard for this year. So if you've ever been out and picked up an egg case, thank you. Thank you if you've found your way through to the Great Eggcase hunt as well. One egg case might not seem like it's a huge deal, but together that all creates data. So we've got 300,000 records now. So it's going to really help us build a better picture of species presence and diversity. And this year we're really going to drill into that database and interrogate it a bit more and hopefully have some exciting findings out by the end of the year. So watch this space on that front. And finally, obviously, thank you to Project Siarc and everyone involved in all of the funders as well. As we're really excited that we can develop these resources into Welsh and engage more with North Wales Wildlife Trust and the events that you guys are going to be running, especially over the next couple of weeks for Easter. So thank you very much. She'll stop sharing and pass back to Nia as well now.